Indians adore gold more than the people of any other country. This explains why Indians' buying of gold cannot stop. Unfortunately, India does not produce any gold. The last gold mines in Kolar and Huddy in the state of Karnataka have nearly exhausted their wealth. Mining the gold still left has become too expensive. The temples are also made of heavy gold in India. That's why Indian tradition is very famous in the whole world. No bride, however poor, leaves her paternal home without at least a trinket of gold. For the rich and the super rich, the bride is given enough gold to weigh her down. Marriages are finalized, annulled, postponed or solemnized on this transaction of gold. Arranging gold for their daughter often drives the parents to penury. Such is the centrality of the gold's role in Indian society. The profile of the gold buyer also changed with time. Today bullion is bought by cunning investors, the super-rich class and speculators looking for some quick profits. Smugglers no longer bring in the gold. It comes in through regular transparent and legal channels. Often, banks sell gold coins of different values. They also liberally accept gold as mortgage or giving hassles-free cash loans. The age-old pawnbrokers compete with banks to stay in business. Gold buyers, big and small, do some hard calculations. They think the economy and its financial system is unfair to honest earners of wealth. The reason, the creeping inflation eats away their hard-earned money. This perception, largely justified, drives them away from keeping their money in banks. They flock to the jewelry shops instead. The fast-rising prices of the yellow metal bolster their argument. Indians do not heed their leaders' calls not to keep their savings in gold, because by doing so, they boost the demand for bullion, which the country finds hard to import because of its limited foreign exchange reserves. India buys nearly 1,000 tons, or a fifth of global annual supply. That is the same as Switzerland's total gold holding. Why do Indians love gold so much? Love for gold is rooted in the Indian tradition. But, the craze for buying it rose exponentially in the last 3 decades, making India the largest importer of bullion in the world. India's consumption of gold in 1982 was a meager 65 tons. Importing the yellow metal has always been a big burden for this poor country. Various restrictions on gold buying have been put in place by different governments from time to time. Until 1990, gold imports were almost banned. To meet its domestic demand, bullion was smuggled in by many ingenious means, through the sea and air routes. In many Bollywood movies, the villain was invariably portrayed as a gold smuggler making deals in smoke-filled underground rooms. As a result of such restrictions clamped by the government, its domestic price was 50% higher than the price in the international market. The typical buyers were the low middle class and middle class families, farmers and businessmen. For these people, gold was the real currency with liquidity at par with cash, but having a time-tested shield against inflation. It was an asset a needy man could use to tide over hard times. As India's economy rebounded, government lifted the controls on gold import. Overnight, the scourge of smuggling vanished. But, the decontrol resulted in some unintended consequences. The Hindu festival of Akshaya Tritiya, celebrated on May 7 this year, is considered an auspicious time to buy gold. Queues outside Indian jewelry stores become so long that makeshift tents are set up to accommodate the rush. Cashiers hand-count wads of banknotes in conditions as noisy as those in a busy fast food restaurant. The salesmen cater to a remarkable level of demand. As a group, Indians buy more gold than anyone apart from the Chinese, who have occupied the top spot since 2014. Indian households are reckoned to have a stockpile of gold worth $800 billion. Yet the Indian market is not as healthy as it was. Purchases of the metal have fallen by around a fifth since their peak in 2010. Buying, keeping and selling of gold needs little paperwork. So, there is much less snooping by the government inspectors. For tax evaders, gold is the safest and easiest conduit. The burgeoning political corruption in India generates humongous black money for which gold is the safest haven. Such trend to freeze huge amounts of cash in gold plays havoc with the country's economy. Import of bullion has drained India's hard currency reserves. Gold import bill touched $54 billion in the year 2013. This contributed to India's current account deficit ballooning to 4.8% of GDP. Gold contributed to half of it. More importantly, funds locked in gold are not available for the country's development plans. Thus, despite having high overall savings rate on par with those of Asia's fast-developing economies, India struggles to mobilize funds for its development activities. India, as a country, is conspicuously underbanked. Only 1/3 of Indians have bank accounts. This is another reason why Indians living in unbanked pockets put their money in gold. Added to that, there is the glaring mismatch between the fixed deposit interest offered by banks and the galloping inflation the average Indian has to contend with. The banks have to lend to the government at low rates, making it impractical for them to pay more interest to their depositors. Such cheap funds encourage imprudent government spending. The share market has looked pallid in recent years. Returns from shares are low. Faced with few alternatives, people with investable surpluses buy gold. The price of gold rose every year between 2002 and 2014. The second reason why gold is popular is that it allows you to buy it without having to fill up umpteen forms, returns and the vexing paraphernalia. To treat wealth and the wealthy with suspicion and envy is peculiar Indian trait. It is entrenched in the bureaucracy. Glorifying poverty is a part of Indian culture. Although it is a lofty idea, stifling the wealthy in modern times is a regressive policy. The underlying Indian culture is an extremely long-lasting one. Life out in the villages hasn't been changed all that much by the insertion of different ruling classes at the top, the Mughals, British and so on, so standard behavior is based on some very old historical roots. That at least partly explains the use of gold as an important part of household savings. But there's also the path dependence thing. That market in physical gold is extremely liquid as so many people use it. It is entirely possible to pawn or sell a small piece of gold in order to purchase food if the need should arise. In a manner in which gold jewelry isn't as liquid in richer countries, you can always sell it, but the buy-sell spread is much higher. Thus gold, or gold jewelry, is a useful form of saving. Mumbai, the Reserve Bank of India has set up a committee to study Indian household financing pattern and why they spend large sum of money on gold. The panel will look at various facets of household finance in India and to benchmark India's position vis-à-vis both the peer and advanced countries, it said in a statement on Thursday. The panel, headed by Tarun Ramadorai, professor of financial economics, University of Oxford, will have representation from financial sector regulators, SEBI, FIRDA apart from RBI. It will consider whether, how, and why the financial allocations of Indian households deviate from desirable financial allocation and behavior. The large household allocation to gold. The news of the discovery of gold mines with 3,500 tons of gold reserve in Uttar Pradesh's Sonbhadra district first broke on the February 20th in regional papers. By February 22, 2020, the entire Indian media was abuzz with the news that Sonbhadra gold mines had gold deposits estimated to be around 3,350 tons and worth Rs 12 lakh crore, which is almost 5 times India's current gold reserve. The reports quoted a district mining officer and estimated that with this find, India's current gold reserve of 626 tons would jump to second place in the world behind US, which holds 8,133.5.